Good morning and welcome to the first of 3 Africa-focused sessions that we're having here at the Bridge this morning. My name is Daniel Evans, and in this first session we're going to be talking about African energy sovereignty, which I think is a really great topic to kick off the morning with. In the next 20 years, almost 1 billion Africans are going to be born. That creates 2 major priorities for many African countries. First of all, how does economic growth keep up with that demographic growth? And secondly, how do you provide more affordable, reliable energy to that growing population? As a result, we've seen an African energy sovereignty narrative emerge that really highlights the role that rapid resource development can play, not just in propelling the economic growth of the continent, but also in terms of ending energy poverty. So we're going to be talking about what it takes to make that narrative reality, what it takes to turn that ambition into action. And to do that, I'm delighted to be joined by a fantastic panel this morning. So Alcides Andrade, who is one of the executive board members of ANPG, Angola's regulator. Morning to you. From Nigeria, Owando's GM for their upstream business. That is Bambo Ibidapo Obe. Morning, welcome to you. And then from NNPC, Nigeria's national oil company, Chief Finance and Investor Relations Officer, Olubenga Olawaniyi. So, morning to you all.
Good morning.
And welcome. Let's get started. So, Alcides, we're going to be talking about energy sovereignty, but what does that really mean to you?
Morning, Daniel. Morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. It's open to interpretation. A lot of definitions out there. But if you go to the highest level, you may think about it in terms of how you control your energy systems, how including the process of producing energy, distributing it, and also consuming it. So if you look at Africa, for instance, in one hand, we have abundance of energy in terms of potential oil and gas. And on the other hand, we deal with energy poverty. About 1.5 billion people in Africa, and it's estimated about 50% of the population don't have access to stable energy. And as you pointed out, and that's the 1.5 billion people is about 19 to 20% of the world's population right now. And as you pointed out, the growth projection shows in the next few years we're going to get to another 1 billion addition to that. So by the time we have 9 billion people in the world, Africa is going to be probably about 30% of the population. So energy poverty is a problem today, and it's a much bigger problem in the future. So we need to find solutions for that. And one way to do that is look at the different challenges countries in Africa have. And I was part of a conversation yesterday. There's a tendency to talk about Africa as a country. Yeah. You know, there are 54 countries in Africa. And the challenges are different from country to country. Some countries have capacity, production issues, and some countries have distribution issues. For instance, in Angola, over the last 20 years or so, we have more than doubled our capacity in terms of power production. So the numbers, last numbers I saw, is about 4 gigawatts of production capacity right now. There are other projects underway to get to about 9 gigawatts in the next few years, and there's potential for growth as you move forward to 18 gigawatts in the long term. So in Angola, our challenge is not production or capacity, it's distribution.
Yeah, so I think that's an interesting point to kind of, although Africa as a continent faces some challenges, every country's situation is different, is very different. So maybe, Benga, to bring you in from a Nigerian perspective, do you think does Nigeria have energy sovereignty today?
Okay, I mean, just taking it from the definition provided by my colleague, as it is, sovereignty in energy relates to the level of independence that nations have in determining how they manage, how they source, how they transmit and utilize energy, basically. If you look at Nigeria today, to a reasonable extent, we will say that we're not there yet fully, but we're very much on the way to achieving that over the long term. And I think the challenge that gave birth to this type of conversation around sovereignty has to do with sometimes the push. The way the African side will see it is like we're being compelled to do certain things, whereas we're not in the room where decisions for such are being taken. And I think the need to incorporate every interest in the process of critical decisions actually gave rise to conversations around sovereignty in the energy space. So Nigeria, representing the African continent in a way, will spearhead and drive that. But it's a journey. The destination is still ahead, I would say.
Yeah. So you said it's part of being in the right conversations, and I suppose it's also part of being in those conversations on an equal status. But does energy sovereignty mean that you no longer need international partners, or is it just a rebalancing of the power between those international partners and the African companies and governments?
I mean, while it speaks to a degree of independence and the ability to control what happens in particular territories, it does not rule out international partnership.
It's good news.
But what's important is that such partnership should be such that it doesn't become a situation where one nation becomes unreasonably dependent on others. It should be a situation where every nation has some level of reasonable independence by way of capacity development and other policy decisions that will be put in place. Yeah. If you look at international trade, for instance, over time, the way it has evolved, it anchors on the principle of comparative advantage, in which case nations are expected to focus on the areas of their core competencies. Yeah. So you produce what you can do in excess, and then you share that with other countries for value. And so everybody concentrate on their areas of core competence. Some of the times, these are determined not necessarily by what you have done. It could just be natural endowment. But the issue is, if you look at Africa today, part of the endowment that we have are natural. And then you have a situation where the natural endowment is made available, taken to other nations, and then the output of that is brought back to us. We buy it, you know. Yeah. That's not going to be a position of strength. And that's one of the things that leadership in Africa needs to focus on, that build that capacity, that puts us in a position to negotiate for a position of strength.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting, kind of shifting the dynamics in the relationship. And I want to come back to thinking about how you shift that balance from being just a resource exporter to more value add in country. But before I bring you in on that, Bambo, I just wanted Alcides, you to pick up quickly on something that Benga said. He talked a little bit about how the conversation has changed. Have you seen the conversation change over the past, say, 5 years, 10 years?
Yes, we have seen movement, and I think it comes down to collaboration. Throughout the last couple of days here in the discussions has been about the energy demand growth going forward. Population growth is going to drive the energy demand. Also, the economic development in emerging markets is going to drive the energy demand. And also, the digital transformation is here with the data centers and so forth. So it's about understanding what problem we were trying to solve. And I think from that standpoint, there's been collaboration in terms of finding all different sources of energy and to address the energy demand going forward for everybody, whether it's Africa or other regions as well.
So the conversation is becoming more collaborative.
Yes.
I think that's very encouraging. Bambo, just to bring you in, so we've been talking about a little bit about definitions of energy sovereignty and what that means in terms of greater decision-making power, a more important seat in the room in those discussions. What does energy sovereignty mean in terms of economic development, investment further downstream? Does it lead to greater industrialization?
Thanks for that. I honestly think that changing the paradigm helps there. There are things that we need to start looking at as opportunities. A lot of times when we talk about Africa, a lot of people talk about Africa like it's one country and not the many different countries. And I like when Benga spoke about comparative advantages of the different countries and how we can use that. And honestly, in that we see an opportunity. We talk about energy poverty, over 400 million people without access to power. Once that's happening, we can't expect that someone else is going to come and solve it for us, which is somewhat of the challenge. However, raising the funding to build the required infrastructure may not also be possible on the continent. Why has the conversation been changing over the past 5-10 years? It's really because Africa as a whole is being seen as less risky. So it's the uncertainty. If you have 400 million people, that in itself, if it's properly structured, is a market. It's a huge market. And the demand is clear. What we've been trying to do is build a value chain in the first instance in Nigeria, where Wando is, and also looking across Africa. We have the resources, we have to power. For us, it's not a question, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about this later on. It's not a question of energy transition when you're talking about energy poverty. If you don't have power, then it's not a choice. You need power first. If you have, and I'll use for an example, if we're in the United States now, everybody has power, it's 100%. So when you talk about a transition, you need to move from fossil fuels to sustainable.
Yeah. So you've done a really nice job there, I think, of linking energy poverty and energy sovereignty, and also the role that energy transition can play in kind of providing more energy on top of this. But you also mentioned risk. I'm glad I wasn't the one who brought it up. But Africa has the resources, Africa has the market. Why are people walking away from projects? Why is it so difficult to get investors?
So certainly there's been uncertainty. And a lot of that is going away. If I speak specifically to Nigeria, we've passed a new law, the Petroleum Industry Act, that's brought some more certainty for investment. And there's also been an issue around insecurity, which is a word we've invented over the past few years. It's lack of security. Is that situation getting better?
And
yeah, exactly. So that's a situation that's been getting better. So we now, when you have a secure situation and you can plan and see where your revenues will come from, as you said, the customers are there, the resources are there. If you have a proper company that's able to integrate that, then definitely the funding will come. Now, if we look at Africa, sorry, just to call back to this, if you look at Africa as one entity, you can actually raise that funding in Africa to solve your own problems, poverty. It's difficult to ask a world that's going into a decarbonization mode because they're in transition to fund fossil fuels for your energy poverty that you have to resolve first before you start transiting.
Yeah. So I'll come back to that point and how you kind of stop people butting heads and get them talking the same language. But Benga, I mean, Bambo mentioned that the security situation in Nigeria is improving. I mean, how do you think about articulating the story around risk to investors?
Okay. So when you look at investment opportunities generally, primarily you would have checked the boxes of good value proposition. You would have looked at the ability of projects to generate a cash flow over a period of time, reliable and predictable. You would have looked at the proposition around the consideration for ESG and all of that. Many a time, those boxes are checked. But then you still have challenges attracting the right financing for the same project. And when you look at this, you realize that sometimes it's because of what we call the risk factors. And more often than not, the perception of this risk in the African environment by parties outside of the zone can be a little bit exaggerated and maybe out of proportion. And when decisions are made based on those considerations, you can project what the outcome will be. So first and foremost, in addition to mitigating risk, which will be the responsibility of the host country or the company, it is also very important and necessary that risks are properly dimensioned and analyzed. You know, when we get that right, it becomes easy to relate to the mitigating factors that are put in place. For instance, Bambo spoke about the security situation in Nigeria, and that was an issue at some point in time. It's not like it's totally gone away, but when you consider what the story used to be, at some point, so you have investment in production, for instance, and then that was successful, you got the product out, but between the feed and the terminal, 30%, 40%, sometimes over 50% of the volume is lost to vandalism.
Those are really big numbers. So how few...
In that kind of situation, you find out that the ability to promote additional investment will become challenged.
Yeah.
And that becomes something that the relevant entity or nation needs to focus on and do something about.
So how...
Now, today's story is that has been reversed.
Yeah.
In the last 1-2 years, the kind of output we get from the field to the terminals, I think we cross 100%, and there's a lot of effort to maintain that, you know. So that's there. The moment you see that level of effort and a decision to mitigate a factor that will be counter business, it's better to take it into account and then build on it. And if you look at the solutions that have been put in place for that, it's a solution that is very seriously sustainable over a long period of time. Because to some extent, you have some of these wired even into the enabling law itself, the PIA. So you have a situation where, for instance, you have host communities given responsibility to ensure that the assets, critical assets within their domain are protected. And for doing that, they have benefits that accrue to them, which they will lose if anything happens to the assets.
Sure.
That becomes heavily sustainable.
Yeah.
Right.
So Alcides, Benga has kind of articulated how they've tamed the risk in Nigeria. Angola is a different country, different context. When we were talking earlier, you were talking about how you've changed the conversation with investors that you used to, I think you told me you used to go there and tell them what you want. Now you ask them what they want. So what did they tell you? And how are you providing what they want?
Daniel, so there's been a lot of discussions around risk. What is perception risk or real risk? And the other way to look at it is below ground risk and above ground risk. So this energy business is highly technology driven, complexity is high, capital intensive. So it's important to understand the risk profile of the different opportunities out there that you might have for investment, and also to understand and have that collaboration discussion with the investor community to understand what is it that they need for them to bring the capital in. And this is what we've been able to shift the paradigm in the last few years. And I remember a few years back sitting down, my team and I, and having conversations with investors and telling them exactly, well, we are not here to tell you what we want, but to listen to what your needs are. Within that process, we were able to understand the different variables that we needed to work out to ensure that they bring the capital, they have the conditions to recover the investment as quickly as possible, and also to have a favorable return on investment. The other thing that we did, the investor community, was understand that the speed at which you take decisions and work out the solutions is one of the best incentives you can provide to the investment community. The other piece of it is from how agile you are. Looking at what happens around the world, whether it's a regional, whether it's from a global standpoint, to understand the landscape and what's going on, and to be able to bring in reforms that can place you as the place of choice for investment.
Right. So you're adapting your approach to compete for that capital.
Yes.
Right? So okay, great. Talking about kind of the time ticking down, I'm watching the clock there, and I wanted to pivot the conversation a little bit to focus on the all of the above in the title of this session, and how you're kind of reconciling energy, providing more energy with some of the energy decarbonization pressures. So Bambo, I'm going to be quite blunt here, so excuse me. Is energy transition a big part of your plans, of your strategy?
Oh, the short answer is yes. We believe it's not all or nothing. It's really everything. At Wando, we have a division that's focused on clean energy that's already doing a lot of interesting things in Nigeria and looking to expand. There's really an opportunity, the way we look at it, to expand both in fossil fuels. It's an energy mix. So whilst places like this have to transition, all fossil fuel, you need to move to clean. We are building from a position of energy poverty, so we can create our mix.
Can you do everything at the same time?
We have to do everything. We're already doing everything. You pioneer doing everything. So we're doing fossil fuels. We have infrastructure. We have gas plants. We have power plants. We're doing electric buses. So you have to start by doing everything, and then your mix will build from there. There's absolutely no reason why we can't have smart solar grids in possibly rural areas, and at the same time use gas-powered power plants to power larger cities and industries. So for us, it's everything.
So diversification is a big part of your strategy, of your portfolio. So all of the above?
It's diversification, and it's also attracting the right funding and financing. So there's funding that will not do fossil fuels, but that will do wind and solar. So we have needs for wind and solar as well, and we're ready to do that. Yeah. And if we have funding that can do power plants or gas infrastructure, we'll do that as well.
So Benga, I could see you nodding along to a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could invest in. If you had to choose one place to put your capital in the next 5 years, not all of these places, one place, where would you put it?
In Angola.
Oh, thank you for that. I think for us as a country and as a company, just like Bambo said, the transition is a journey. So, I mean, if you look at what's happening in the world today, you realize that if we shut down fossil fuel already, a small disruption in the Strait is already causing problem worldwide. Prices are up, energy demands are not met, and all of that. So it's a journey. It's not something you reach in one day. But for us, if you're looking at what we're focusing on and what we'll invest in, if we have opportunity of choosing one, it will be gas.
Gas.
Right. Gas is largely identified as transition fuel. So you see the possibility or reality that that will be relevant for longer than oil. So we'll have investment in that space. That's one reason. The second point is that Nigeria, it's not debated anymore that Nigeria is a gas-rich country. As a matter of fact, we are described as a country with a lot of gas and then with some addendum seasoning of oil. So we need to be able to capitalize on that and explore it. The reserve in the country is estimated at 210 TCF. 101 of that is associated gas, and then you have the non-associated gas, which is taking the larger volume at 109 TCF. That's one space that's not really fully, reasonably explored yet.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to take advantage
huge
of that.
opportunity.
So you'll be building infrastructure to utilize that, and you'll be promoting investment in the production of gas.
Okay.
Thank you.
So huge potential in Nigerian gas. You can see some applause down here, potential investors down here in the front row. So Alcides, I'll give you the last word, because I think what we've heard clearly there is that these clean technologies are part of the thinking of African countries, but clearly fossil fuel development is a big part of economic development and also solving energy poverty. So what do you tell investors when they come and say, hold on, keep the resources in the ground, think about a solar project or a wind project? How do you push back on that argument?
Well, I would believe the type of collaboration that we are building in the country with our investors over the last few years has enabled us to have collaborative discussions about identifying the problem and finding the solution. So I've not seen situations in where investors are telling us, let's not pursue the fossil fuels, and we are also not in a position to push back, because it is a collaboration exercise. So we talked about the energy demand going, and that problem needs to be addressed. We talked about energy poverty that Africa has, and we also talked about energy abundance on the other side to address that problem. So my colleagues here pointed out that we would still invest in the energy abundance to bring the fossil fuels and to use that as investment to address the energy poverty that we have.
Okay.
So from a discussion standpoint with the investment community, it's all been about how is it that together we find the solutions going forward. One of the things that we've been able to do with the investment community is to find ways to address the operations decarbonization. Yeah. And also new projects adopting technology to produce fossil fuels in a cleaner manner. In the last 2 years alone, we brought into line 2 projects that are fully electrified by renewable energy, and there are others coming in. Yeah. In addition to the gas focus to develop the gas market that we have.
So the two go hand in hand, and that's the story you've been articulating to investors. Well, this has been a really fascinating discussion. Unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm sure we could go for much longer on this topic. I think I've kind of taken away a couple of really important things here. One, the importance of collaboration, of talking the same language with investors and partners to make sure that you're advancing this energy sovereignty narrative together. And the second is that we're not talking about a single African energy sovereignty narrative. We're talking about 54 very different stories, and that it's important to appreciate those stories when you're going into Africa and thinking about how to make these investments. So many thanks to the panelists. Please stay here. We've got 2 excellent Africa-focused sessions coming up. But please join me in thanking the panelists.